kid Sammy transferred into my class a few years ago. He was a fairly normal-looking kid, kind of disheveled, a little big for his age, but he could have blended in with the other fifth graders in my class until it came time for him to read that first day in school. Now, I knew enough about him coming into this to start him in an easier book, away from the other kids, but within a minute, he was under the table, hiding, having uttered a few choice words, the gist of it being, "I ain't reading your stupid book." Reading wasn't his only problem. Sammy came with a long list of labels: learning disabled, emotionally disturbed, conduct disorder. He was a hard kid to have in class, an angry kid. Angry because someone accidentally bumped into him, or he dropped the football. Angry because I didn't let him collect the materials in science. He'd harden his jaw and clench his fists and stare straight through me and everyone else. He refused to do anything he didn't want to do. He refused to read, refused to write, refused to go to special ed. He was desperately afraid of appearing dumb. With his long list of diagnoses and his very rough home life, anyone would have let me off the hook if this kid hadn't made a lot of progress in my class that year. You see, we teachers will tell you that we believe all kids can learn, but we sometimes let those unspoken buts creep into our thoughts. But this one doesn't speak any English, but he's severely troubled. But she's reading at a first grade level and I teach sixth. But here's the trouble with that way of thinking. If year after year, every one of Sammy's teachers lets him be the exception to the rule that all kids can learn, then how is he ever going to make it? Our duty to our struggling kids, and really to all kids, is to expect more from them. But in order to expect more from them, we have to expect more from ourselves. Today I'll explain my 4 beliefs about how we can expect more from those around us. First, we have to let go of what we can't control. In our classrooms, our students sometimes shoulder pretty sad and scary backgrounds. They face challenges that are beyond our control, and we sometimes let those challenges act as reasons for why we'll probably only have a minimal impact on a kid in a year. I used to make excuses for my students' failure. I used to feel sorry for them, sad for them. But I'd argue that every minute I spent fretting about something over which I had no control was a minute lost. Sammy didn't need my pity. What he needed was for me to spend the time that I did have doing what I do best. That is, figuring out ways to help him learn and reflecting on my own practice. I couldn't do anything to fix his past or help his folks be better parents. But what I could do was carefully choose how to react to his misbehavior. What I could do was find ways to really engage him. You see, every kid has a hook. For Sammy, my secret weapons were teaching lots of science, having a good sense of humor, and helping him save face. While there was a long list of things over which I had no control, there were still 7 hours worth of things each day that I could control. And we have a lot of responsibility to our students in those 7 hours. Second, we have to build relationships with those around us. I find something to love about every child who walks through my classroom door. Every child. And here's why. When they really know that you love them, they'll move heaven and earth for you. Sammy had a long, hard road ahead of him, catching up when he was years behind academically, learning how to function in a classroom when he was so full of hurt and anger. He wasn't easy to love, but that kid's smile, that kid's, "All right, Mrs. LeBlanc," those were my hard-earned rewards. When he figured out that I loved him, that's when he started to trust me. He started to believe me when I'd tell him, that we wanted him here in class with us and not off suspended somewhere. He started to trust me when I'd say, "Hey, you're getting it. Now do your homework so you can keep getting it." We teachers worry about how much work it is for these kids to be in our classrooms, and it is. But just imagine how much work it is for him just living his life. And so instead of always focusing on everything that's wrong, we look for things to love. We have to be strategic in how we talk to people, in how we teach people. They say teachers make between 800 and 1,500 decisions a day, and I believe it. Really teaching every child in our class is mentally exhausting. My 1,000 decisions a day are wrapped up in knowing the strengths and needs of each of 26 kids in all their subjects. Being strategic for Sammy meant teaching him to recognize that angry, explosive feeling and to manage it. "Hey kiddo," I'd tell him, "I know that sometimes a thing will happen that will make you so mad like you want to explode. You and I'll have a signal for when you feel like that. You can take a walk and then come back to me." I had to be strategic in how I taught him to read as well. Here's a kid who was terrified that other people would find out he couldn't read. And can you blame him? He'd spent years looking around himself, just seeing everybody getting it. He saw himself the way others had maybe seen him, as the exception to the rule that all kids can learn. What worked for him was teaching him about brains, how new information goes into your long-term memory. When you demystify learning for a kid like this, he'll start to see himself in a new light. For the first time, he started to really believe that he wasn't stupid, that he actually was able. Doing the work that enables someone to start believing in himself feels like nothing short of magic. It feels like magic, but it isn't. It's hard work. It's making 1,000 decisions in a day. Finally, we have to be incredibly, superhumanly persistent. I think Sammy craved people who wouldn't give up on him. People who, when one approach didn't work, tried it another way and then another way. We teachers lose a lot of sleep trying to work things out for our toughest students. For example, my Sammy hated working with other kids. Talking in turn was nearly impossible. Listening to other people's point of view, not going to happen. But what he loved was science, and not reading out of the book science, but real science. So, like any teacher who really wants to push a kid to do better, I required him to do the labs, social skills and all. You could practically see him deliberating sometimes. Will getting to dissect a flower with a plastic butter knife be worth the effort it takes to be polite and take turns? But remember that kid's grin? That, "All right, Mrs. LeBlanc." Well, this was years ago, and I can still see this kid, my perfect memory of him, bringing me a limp, dissected tulip, saying, "Those kids said that part here is an egg." "Yep," I told him, "that's the flower's egg." He was incredulous. He was confused, but he was smiling. And here's this kid, without the anger, fists not clenched, not stuck in a desk in the corner of the room away from everyone else, actually smiling, saying, "Mrs. LeBlanc, how can a flower lay an egg?" When we expect more, when we insist on being good enough for those who struggle, when we motivate them to work hard, and that hard work enables them to believe in themselves, that is the only way we will ever know what is really possible. Thank you.